I don't know if that makes me an 11-year-old because
We don't play.
no, I don't want to play it. I have enough trouble counting to 4. I can't imagine counting to 5. But you guys did amazing. Joe Morello's got nothing on you, Ben. That was Ben Eisenberg on drums, keeping that 5/4 time for us. Go ahead. Yeah. Eric Franzen, who is keeping that song, all the glue, keeping. Where are you, Eric? There you. Okay. Great job. And Joseph, your solo, Joseph Nichols on that was fantastic. That was great. And Bobby, that was wonderful. I really appreciate you. Good, Bobby Gregg, everyone. Well, I'm going to say more, and I don't want them to forget to clap after I'm done. But you got to keep telling those stories. Keep telling the stories. Whenever you have one for a song that you think would speak to us. See, that's all our faith really is telling these stories. And that's what we did all through Holy Week and leading up to it in Lent and Easter, was repeating the stories that are near and dear to us. And stories are richest when they're meaningful to us and it's something that is spoken to us. And so when you tell these stories, you're sharing not only a piece of yourself, but the sincerity of that story. But in seminary, there are a lot of people who come into seminary and are big sports fans. And so in the class on preaching, homiletics, the professor usually says, look, every Sunday can't be 4th and goal. You know, your analogy cannot be a football 4th and goal every Sunday. And so that image came to my mind, and I thought there could be this, and I'm not saying there will be, but there could be this future down the line where Bobby has seen the light and is preaching in a church, but every Sunday is a Charlie Parker story, is a Dave Brubeck story. That's what your classroom is for, and that's what Jazz Vespers is for. You've got that outlet. This is really an exciting theme to me because there's so many things in the world right now that seem to suggest not taking 5, not taking a break, not giving ourselves that space to rest, to breathe, to just exist. And we have this verse in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, 28, when Jesus says, come to me, you who are weary. And it's a great invitation for those of us who are weary, who are carrying heavy burdens, to be able to come and just rest for that moment. And so when we were talking about, Megan and I were talking about this theme for tonight, and I was thinking post-Easter, I kind of thought take 5. And so I think I asked Bobby if take 5 was a thing we could do, assuming it was. I thought it was deceptively simple. I thought it was. My sense was this is a sound that everybody likes to hear, but is probably harder to execute. I didn't know that it took that they really had that much trouble. I did know that I started reading about the background because I thought, what were they thinking about this? And so I want to read a sentence to you, and it would be great to just pick it apart and see how incongruous it sounds today. In 1958, the U.S. State Department sponsored a Dave Brubeck quartet tour to what was called at the time Eurasia. How many parts of that sentence would we not say today? Eurasia comes to mind first. We would recognize that in Europe and Asia there are all these cultures and different things, and lumping them together may not seem quite appropriate. But the first part of the sentence is equally unlikely. Today, having the State Department, the United States State Department, put on a goodwill tour of one of the American cultural artifacts to share with the world just seems so hard to believe, especially with recent news and politics and news last year and all the government cuts and the different things. it sort of blew my mind a little bit that there was a point in history when the U.S. State Department said, we want to share Dave Brubeck with the world. We want the world to see what's going on. So Brubeck, Paul Desmond, the sax player, Joe Benjamin, and Joe Morello had a very tight schedule. Over a period of just 3 months, they played 80 concerts in 14 countries, including Iran, Iraq, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. If those names seem familiar, it again seems so unlikely what happened then. But the thing was, and that's that tour as a good launch point isn't actually the point. What's interesting is as they traveled, they encountered what was to them new music, new sounds, new rhythms. And Brubeck had been playing with rhythms since the 1940s and was exploring. And as is the case with all, and I think present company included, phenomenal musicians, when they hear something new and interesting, they want to play with it. And so they started to play with these time signatures because these rhythms didn't fit the 4/4, 3/4 patterns that we use in most Western music. And so when Brubeck got home, they wanted to put it all together and be intentional and put it together in an album. The group started making a new album, but they did everything wrong. They did everything against the pattern at the time. First of all, it was standard practice that you'd play a few standards. Every new album had to include Stella by Starlight or Moondust or something. These were all original tunes. Another thing they did was they had some modern art. This was coming up on 1960 by the time they were finishing this album. And they had some modern art for the album cover. People didn't do that at the time. And then the creme de la creme was they were all in creative time signatures. Blue Rondo was 9/8. 3 to get ready goes 2 measures 4/4, 2 measures 3/4. Pick Up Sticks was in 6/4. And so they were putting this album together, and the record company wasn't having it. None of it worked, none of it was right, none of it was what fit the pattern. And so it wasn't until the company president intervened and said, nobody needs another cover of whatever the latest thing you want out of the American songbook or a Broadway show tune. This is cool what they're doing. And so they had the green light to finish the album. But at the last minute, Brubeck thought it needed one more song. And he specifically wanted something in 5/4. So that was the design parameter. Joe Morello had been playing a drum solo in 5/4, kind of to play the people out. And I didn't really get to the bottom of why he had that, other than he liked that groove. I think it was also so people couldn't clap along. They just got up and started moving. But he had this groove, and so Joe had been saying to Dave Brubeck, who was the primary composer of their band, can you write something to go on top of this? I said, all right, I don't have anything. And Paul Desmond, the sax player, said, I think I can come up with something. And so he came back with this melody that we all find so intoxicating. And together the band put the pieces in place, and because of its 5/4 time signature, they called it Take 5. But the idiom Take 5 predates Desmond's tune. Early 20th century mining companies had adopted it as the standard vernacular for taking a brief break and getting back to work. The getting back to work was the important part of taking 5. You could have a moment, but get back to it. It had also become known in the vaudeville and show tunes world as that lull between songs. They're going to take 5 for a minute while we move the stage around. And so that was a common expression, as it continues to be today. I think it's a candy bar also. I didn't continue my research beyond that. But I think that Brubeck and the boys knew that it was about more than a time signature. Take 5 is this chance to rest. It's that familiar little bit. Take 5 strikes us as a song, or many of us, in the same way that we feel when we hear that familiar hymn. It's that smile, it's the phone coming out to record, it's that moment of recognition. Jesus knew about these things, and that's what I think he was talking about in Matthew 11, when he said, "Come to me, you who are weary. Come to me, you who have just, ministers, gotten through Holy Week. Even as rich and meaningful and wonderful as it is, come to me and take a break. Come to me, you kids who have been practicing for hours and hours to be able to get to play the Paul Desmond tune that you've been dying to play, and just rest for a moment." Because it's in that rest that we can find ourselves, we can find peace, we can find community, and we can find God. And we have to be able to do both. We have to be able to do the work, do the things that God calls us to do, but also take that moment to rest and to relax and to just lean in to those everlasting arms. Many of us in church struggle against that tension to take 5 because we're always trying to get to what's next. And I submit that we're not alone. I think that's that way in life. Most people have trouble with that. And so Jesus' words to come to me and rest seem to be a good post-Easter message, a good message for the end of this season of Jazz Vespers. And depending on the struggles that you're carrying with you today, that could be a good message for you. Amen. As the musicians are making their way up, I want to assure you Jazz Vespers will be back. As soon as we have the dates, we're going to be putting those together on a poster to be able to share and make sure we get the word out. But now we were going to sing a familiar song that Megan will introduce.